exist. Hey, thanks for watching our live stream. I'm the host, David Krayden. I'll be back in about 10 minutes with the show. In the meantime, have a look at some of these clips and take the opportunity, please, to like this broadcast, ring the bell, or subscribe.
And we're stepping up in every way we can because we know that Russia must win this war. That Ukraine must win this war against Russia.
Go down the list of things that Justin Trudeau disapproves of, and you can imagine all of the things that will be criminalized. That someone who spent the first half of his adult life as a practicing racist, who dressed up in hideous racist costumes so many times he says he can't remember them all, should then be the arbiter on what constitutes hate.
I did not call people who were unvaccinated names.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
For everything you did, thank you to put your life on the line for us. You're one of the greatest women I've ever met in my life.
A lot of people would say that you're simply taking a page out of the Donald Trump book.
Which people would say that?
Well, I'm sure a great many Canadians, but...
Like who?
I don't know who. But
we feel, because you all will have implants, and we measure your brain waves, and I can immediately tell you how the people react, or I can feel how the people react to your answers.
Oh, no, Mr. Bond. I expect you to be chipped.
I'm a liberal and a proud socialist, Mr. Speaker.
This is a Manchurian candidate. For people who don't understand the expression, I'm not talking about the movie, I'm referring to somebody who can be used as a useful idiot by another country to come out and spout these things off. He is a Marxist.
End your silence. Speak up. For God's sake, stop complying. Start rebelling. They're out to get you if you do not resist.
Good buddy, mercy, sake of life, looks like we got us a convoy.
Canadian country singer Paul Brandt here. I've been listening with my wife and 2 kids, and we want to say thank you for all you're doing in defense of civil liberties and freedom.
I'll ask the question I posed to you at the start of my round. Will you apologize on behalf of the government for this outrageous invite?
And
stand by the invitation.
Of course, what I said in my initial.
You have no shame.
What? Oh my heavens!
There is nothing they fear like the crystal clear sound of someone somewhere telling the truth.
So it will be a world integrating the physical, biological, and the digital dimensions. So it will be a new world.
Stop giving them the benefit of the doubt. Because I can tell you, you cannot comply your way out of a tyranny.
Out of war, a few people make huge fortunes. I would say it's plain to see that the racket has been going from strength to strength ever since. In his farewell address to the American people in 1961, outgoing President and old soldier Dwight D. Eisenhower warned about the threat posed by what he was already able to identify as the military-industrial complex.
These are all small countries today. They're much like the Greek city-states in the age of the Roman Empire. We're a sort of declining Rome at this point. I hope Americans will figure that out and act against it, but we're a declining Rome. The European states are like the little Greek city-states that were entirely dependent upon Roman military power to save them from the Macedonians. This whole business is a sham. NATO is probably not going to survive.
From the Public Health Agency of Canada did not have the science to support this policy. So the government initiated a study with a guy named David Fisman at the University of Toronto. And this study was so bad, Madam Speaker, that there's a book called Fisman's Fraud, The Rise of Canadian Hate Science, And I just want to know, how much money did they spend on these studies to support this Arrive scam when they knew that they didn't have the science to even support it from day one?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, Madam Speaker, the mega conservative far right is coming out. These are the anti, these are the ones that still deny the pandemic. And at the end of the day, thank goodness it was that Canadians and the majority of the people in the House saw the value of protecting the health and well-being of Canadians, and that the far right was marginalized back then, Madam Speaker, because as a direct result, more people are living today.
When did you and your government start to become so afraid?
Don't tell me there are people in the Liberal
of your
Party
own
who see that
citizens?
quote going, all right, well, let's really sit down here.
The Online Harms Act. You've heard about it?
Who would succeed Justin Trudeau?
Well,
I don't know
I've
the
got
name.
some bad news for you.
That's an entirely different subject.
At your free speech.
But if I hear a leader saying that on open mic, 20 points down in the polls,
terrified.
There's some easy dots to connect there. Like, what do you really want? Who do you think? Do you want the gig? Is this something for you? There is no harm in walking away from a job this difficult. Zero. Plenty of people have done it in the past. So that's the first part of that. If you're in the Liberal Party, you hear that.
This is the worst assault on freedom of expression.
The other part of that is it's sometimes a boring job.
Donc le but, c'était de faire une pression économique, empêcher de faire.
So the goal was to put economic pressure on these people to stop them from buying groceries, paying into their health insurance, and get them out of the streets.
Not the characterization that I would put on it. The objective was to ensure that those who were funding the continued illegal blockade of this and other cities were no longer able to do so.
Okay. Donc vous n'avez pas répondu à ma question.
So you didn't answer my first question. In which other democratic country is it possible to do that?
Democratically passed legislation in this country pursuant to the Emergencies Act in Canada.
Ok, donc vous avez fait le droit là. Vous vous êtes inspiré de la Corée du Nord.
So what, were you inspired by North Korea for this?
No. I'm not going to respond to that type of question, Madam Chair.
No, mais
He's calling them domestic terrorists and wants to freeze their bank accounts. This has been absolutely outrageous. And everybody now is starting to agree that Justin Trudeau has lost this fight.
There will be consequences.
Justin Trudeau, though, this week said something I hated, which he called out. He said, the world we're starting to see the rise, the growth of authoritarianism and totalitarianism and dictatorships. And I couldn't believe that he said this with a straight face. Listen.
In all of our democracies, in every democracy around the world, we are seeing a rising movements of either authoritarian populism or skepticism about democracy itself. And we all need to recommit ourselves to standing up, not just for Ukraine, but through standing up for Ukraine, to the very principles that make our countries strong and free.
So Justin Trudeau says these comments, he says them with a straight face, as if he doesn't realize what's happening in his own country being led by him to clamp down on freedoms, the authoritarianism that he is presiding over in Canada.
Biden mourned Navalny's death. Even in prison, he was a powerful voice for the truth, he said. An interesting statement while journalist Julian Assange, who published Truth Inconvenient to the US and the West, presently rots in Belmarsh prison as he fights extradition to the US. I'm not yet aware of Biden mentioning, far less lamenting, the death in a Ukrainian prison of US citizen and writer Gonzalo Lira, who was critical of the Zelensky regime. Biden's administration has sought determinedly to jail his and their strongest and most popular opponent, Donald Trump. And yet, in the immediate aftermath of Navalny's death, Biden highlighted Vladimir Putin's desperate attempts to stamp out the opposition. Zelensky, propped up only by Western cash, has crushed his own political opponents as well. The pattern seems clear. Bleat about enemies threatening democracy, while simultaneously and blatantly and hypocritically seeking to trample on democracy at home, or turn a blind eye to the same being carried out by allies, or make that business partners.
Well, welcome to another Stand on Guard Goes to Question period. We're trying something a little different today. It's the first time we did the intro. I hope you all like that. And I want to return to the story here about Justin Trudeau's interview. It was basically not picked up by anybody on social media over the weekend. I can't believe this. And it was only mentioned twice in question period yesterday. Yeah, I know the Conservatives wanted to talk about the caribou and Quebec and the forestry there. And yes, it was Brian Mulroney's day in the House for the members to eulogize the late Prime Minister. But question period was a bit of a farce yesterday as far as I'm concerned. Oh, yes, I know some people out there say yeah, it's always a farce. But there should have been a lot more said about this story here. So I was a little disappointed. That's okay. Anyway, welcome back to Stand on Guard. And I hope you're going to enjoy this question period today. I'm betting Justin's in the house, but we never know for sure. So we will find out. I found a clip of a bunch of journalists here, and I'm not sure what this show is. I just found it before I came on the air. But there's been very little talk about Justin Trudeau saying, first of all, he feels like quitting his job every day. And he does say that the job of being Prime Minister is super boring. Now, the BBC and other networks have deliberately changed the translation to challenging. From super boring to very challenging. I mean, it's really quite stupid. And clearly, Justin Trudeau is bored with his job. He calls it crazy. But he also says, he's got to persevere because he's such an important man and it's such an important job. And but it's nonetheless, it's so hard on poor Justin. Let's listen to this interview here. I find quite interesting.
Fascinating to kind of read. I think internally and externally, there's two different stories. One, when he says, I think about quitting every day, going on that walk in the snow, as his dad famously went on, and the anniversary just happened to that. Don't tell me there aren't people in the Liberal Party who see that quote going, all right, well, let's really sit down here. Let's figure this out. Now, who would succeed Justin Trudeau? I don't know the name. That's an entirely different subject. But if I hear a leader saying that on open mic, 20 points down in the polls, there's some easy dots to connect there. What do you really want? Who do you think? Do you want the gig? Is this something for you? There is no harm in walking away from a job this difficult. Zero. Plenty of people have done it in the past. So that's the first part of that. If you're in the Liberal Party, you hear that internally. That's interesting. The other part of that is it's sometimes a boring job. I'm interested to know what aspects of it he finds kind of boring. Because what's boring to him might not be boring to other people. Like global affairs, the housing crisis, there was a famous line from this Prime Minister, the budget will balance itself. There have been slip-ups down through the years. What does he find boring about the job? That's the one thing I would like to dig further into. They didn't in the interview necessarily. But I just think the quotes from this Prime Minister are getting more interesting by the day. And I don't know what the end game is in terms of being this honest. Final point. To be this honest, if you're the leader of our country, yes or no?
Yes or no. And he poses this question, of course, to his colleagues here. And at least one of them says, I don't really want to know if the Prime Minister finds the job so boring that he wants to quit. At the same time, she's saying, truth is important, but I don't want to know if the Prime Minister wants to quit. I think we need to know that, though. And I agree with this journalist here who says we need to understand what the Prime Minister finds so boring about this job. Clearly, he should not be bored in a job that is at this level but he doesn't seem capable of realizing how important the job is. I find that quite astounding. So we can't let this interview die. It revealed so much about Justin Trudeau and who he is. And as I said the other day, if you watch those year-end interviews of Justin Trudeau with his old buddy who used to be a morning talk show host on a Montreal radio station, every year the two of them have sort of a pre-Christmas interview and they share a pint of beer and they go through, how was your year, Justin? And of course, it's a hagiographic interview from this journalist who just adores Justin Trudeau. He's a pure acolyte of Justin Trudeau. He thinks he is just the most wonderful human being and probably the greatest prime minister who has ever occupied the office. So they're all a bunch of softball questions. But nonetheless, it's the way Justin Trudeau bats the ball that enables you to know what kind of a man this is, because you understand he allows glimpses into his soul, which is pretty shallow, because he talks about the movies he likes to watch on television, and he binges on Netflix on trash, and he reads a lot of science fiction, and he likes films about superheroes. It sounds to me like he's a 17-year-old, and it really hasn't emotionally matured. And I think that's why he's not to be trusted as a prime minister. But so we're going to go to question period momentarily here. No time. What time are we at here? Yeah. So I'm just going to have to hook up, and we will be there momentarily. So just bide with me here, and we will get on to going on.
Liberals overhyped housing accelerator fund, but Toronto has received $500 million. A clear message has been sent to the
there we are.
Georgina, East Gwillimbury, Aurora,
except we're not quite there, are we?
And the Chippewas of Georgina Island. According to the Liberals, you are not Toronto enough for housing funding, but to Toronto to get the rural top-up. These Liberals are out of touch. They are hiking up the carbon tax by 23%, though it does nothing for the environment. Their housing fund won't build a single home in
folks, we're on.
Like York Simcoe.
Thanks for your patience today. I just got a few more things to say, but we will be there. We will be there for the first questions from Pierre Poilievre.
Today to proudly celebrate our Canadian cattle industry, our ranchers, our beef producers across.
I'm gonna have a look at your comments. I try to keep putting your comments up here, because I think it's important. Yeah, I think it's important we liaise with each other during this show. Good morning, good afternoon, Cindy. Good afternoon, Sandy. How are you both? All sorts. He is a proud embarrassment to this country. I love that. I love that. That's great. Just a comment before we get into the questions here. I hope we get some substantive questions today from the official opposition, because we didn't get a lot of those yesterday. And like I said, I'll reiterate it, because this is the week we have sandwiched between breaks. And when the MPs are on breaks and there's no question period, there tends to be the media cycle tends to break down, meaning the prime minister does not have to answer uncomfortable, difficult questions. And the uncomfortable, difficult questions he needs to talk about right now are why Arrive-Can was allowed to happen, why he did nothing, why he intends to do nothing, why the RCMP are only doing a half-assed investigation, Chinese election interference. Did he know about it? Of course he did. Did he want it to happen? What did he know about Chinese election interference? And how did it elect Liberal MPs in the last election? Chinese spying at the biological lab in Winnipeg. What the hell happened there? Why was this allowed to go on for so long? And why was the documentation buried for 2 years? How did the Liberals get away with this? And why are the Liberals continuing to get away with this? We got to continue to demand answers on this. So we will go to the statements, and I will be adding my 2 cents worth as required. Thank you, everybody, for joining. By the way, like the broadcast if you can right now. Subscribe if you haven't already. Sometimes YouTube likes to take people off. And ring that bell, because that beats Trudeau's censorship. So, yeah, we had a few rough edges today getting, this is the first time we've started 10 minutes early, and we're trying to do this on a regular basis, at least while question period is still on. So we'll be back in a minute.
Otherwise called Nowruz, which marks the new year for Iranians, Afghans, Ismailis, Baha'is, Zoroastrians, and over 300 million individuals across the world. Many around the world are excited to welcome spring and the promise of a new year. I'm certain every member of this House joins me in wishing all those celebrating Nowruz across Canada a Happy New Year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Happy Nowruz.
Wonderful job. Wonderful job.
L'honorable député d'Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing.
Mr. Speaker, a few weeks ago, Canadian athletes gathered in Calgary for the Special Olympic Winter Games, and competitors from Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing sure made us proud. From Manitoulin Island, skip Tyler Madabi and team members Dylan Danville, Dane Tipper, Austin Recollet, and William Leclerc brought home the gold for curling, and Matthew Bedard won 3 bronze medals in snowshoeing. Elliott Lake's Adam Cormier took home a silver in team and a bronze in singles in 5-pin bowling. Chaque année, les entraîneurs.
Every year, coaches, volunteers, and employees make the Special Olympics something to be proud of. It's important that we acknowledge all that they do to support and encourage our athletes.
Mr. Speaker, the oath of the Special Olympics is let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt. Our Special Olympians who participated at this year's Winter Games continue to exemplify this oath. Congratulations, Tyler, Dylan, Dane, Austin, William, Matthew, and Adam. You have shown strength, determination, and courage during these challenging competitions. We are all so very proud of your accomplishments. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Rimouski, Nejet, Témiscouata-les-Basques. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to speak about the 80th anniversary of the Rimouski Maritime Institute of Quebec. This great institution was founded on May 24th, 1944. It was founded by Jules-André Briand, and now, 80 years later, it remains the only training center for a maritime workforce in Quebec and the only francophone institution of this kind in North America. Since it was founded, the Institute has trained generations of experts who have contributed to the maritime industry in all parts of the world. I'd like to thank everyone, both in the past and today, who have promoted our expertise, which is recognized throughout the world. I hope that this national treasure will experience another wonderful 80 years. And on April 6th, there will be a banquet to celebrate the 80th birthday altogether.
The Honourable Member from Cumberland, Colchester.
Speaker, April 1st is usually a day of lighthearted fun for Canadians where we amuse one another with practical jokes. Not for this uncaring NDP Liberal Prime Minister who will play a cruel joke on Canadians by increasing his carbon tax once again, this time by 23% on everything. 70% of Canadians oppose this tax, and all Atlantic Canadian premiers, including the Liberal Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, have joined common sense Conservatives in demanding that this government axe the tax. An astonishing 2 million Canadians need to visit a food bank every month, and now we see charities running out of resources and money to help Canadians. A wise Nova Scotia once commented, and I quote, "No one would believe that you pay money to the government and they will give you more back. This simply is not true." Today, in the Nova Scotia legislature, all political parties voted unanimously, calling on all Nova Scotia MPs to scrap the carbon tax hike. Mr. Speaker, axe the tax.
Yeah, this carbon tax will destroy the government, but it might destroy the country first.
Mr. Speaker, exciting news. Tax season is here. And when Canadians file their taxes, they will receive the Canada carbon rebate. In the provinces where it applies, like my province of Ontario, the Canada carbon rebate will put even
They're
more
hawking that
money
carbon
back
rebate again
into the pockets of most Canadians than they pay into the carbon pricing system.
That's a lie.
Affordability is top of mind in everything our federal government
Julie
does.
Derzowitz, you're lying. You know you are.
Directly
You're paying more for the carbon tax than you are in your silly rebate.
Families are counting on these checks, especially low and middle income Canadians who need it the most. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, Conservative MPs want to cut these rebates that low and middle income Canadians rely on, but we won't let them. Canadian families can count on that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
There you go.
Yes, this is sickening.
All questions.
Here we go.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. The Conservatives have an excellent tax to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. The Prime Minister is simply not worth the cost after 8 years.
Carbon tax are not worth the cost after 8 long years. The Parliamentary Budget Officer confirms that in every single province, Canadians pay far more in taxes than they get back in rebates, a tax that will go up 23%. Today, common sense Conservatives are calling for the Prime Minister to grant his caucus a free vote on our motion to spike the hike.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, 8 out of 10 families throughout the country where we've put a federal price on pollution receive more money from it than they pay into it. What the Leader of the Opposition is proposing is to remove not only checks that are delivered for families that help with groceries, with rent, with the impact of climate change, but they are also doing nothing to fight climate change, to build a stronger future. We are here to help Canadians with checks. We are here to fight against climate change. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Understand that after 8 years, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost. And they're right. According to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, this Prime Minister's carbon tax will cost the average Nova Scotia family $1,500. That's why the Nova Scotia legislature voted unanimously, Liberals, Conservatives, and NDP, to call on federal MPs representing the province to vote with the common sense Conservatives to spike the hike. Will he allow a free vote so Nova Scotians can vote for their constituents rather than the party boss?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
A family of 4 in Nova Scotia gets about $824 back in the year for the price on pollution. The Canadian carbon rebate delivers more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians right across the country. The Leader of the Opposition wants to take away those Canada carbon rebate checks from Canadian families, where 8 out of 10 families do better, even with the price on pollution. It's a way of fighting climate change, of building a safer, more prosperous future,
and putting more money back in the pockets of Canadians, something he wants to take away.
There's no price on pollution, you fool.
The Prime Minister has finally done something helpful when it comes to math. He says that his rebate for Nova Scotians is $850. Well, the parliamentary budget officer confirmed that the cost is $1,500 for the average Nova Scotia family. So he wants to take away $1,500 from the average Nova Scotia family in carbon taxes and give back only $850. Everybody knows that the carbon tax is just like him, not worth the cost. Will he allow a free vote?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, the Leader of the Opposition wants to take away the Canada carbon rebate checks that land in Nova Scotians' mailboxes, but in the pockets of families right across the country where the price on pollution is in place, because 8 out of 10 of them do better with the price on pollution and the Canada carbon rebate than they would. He wants to take away those checks.
Damn it.
From Canadians, and he wants to do far less to fight against the climate change impacts that Canadians are feeling from coast to coast to coast. No plan for the future, no money for Canadians.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
Speaker, the tax revolt has spread to Ontario, where now the Liberal leader of the provincial party has flip-flopped and says that she too is against the Prime Minister's carbon tax. Maybe that's because she read the parliamentary budget officer report showing Ontarians will pay $1,674. That's more than $600 more than the rebate in that province. So, will the Prime Minister allow his Ontario MPs to have a free vote on our common sense conservative motion to spike the hike?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, families in Ontario are facing higher prices for groceries, higher costs for rent, and we are delivering a Canada carbon rebate that leaves them better off. 8 out of 10 Canadian families across the country do more money in their pockets with the Canada carbon rebate than the price on pollution costs them. At the same time, the price on pollution is bringing down carbon emissions, preparing a cleaner economy of the future, and putting more money back in Canadians' pockets. The Conservatives want to take away the Canada carbon rebate checks. We're going to continue to support families on affordability and fighting climate change.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Right from the parliamentary budget officer's numbers, he says $1,674 is the cost of the average Ontario family, and the rebate is only $1,047. So Ontarians are paying more than they get back, just like British Columbians, where the NDP government is administering the federally mandated carbon tax. And according to the Vancouver Sun today, the budget presented by the NDP in that province says the carbon tax will raise $9 billion over 3 years and only pay back $3 billion. Mr. Speaker, that's a net nearly $6 billion net carbon tax cost. Will he allow BC MPs?
Now that's a good point.
Prime Minister.
Good point.
Watching politics and watching this question period, for reporters up in the gallery or anyone who wants to see a concrete example of the fact that the leader of the official opposition doesn't care about facts, doesn't care about evidence, doesn't care about how the Federation works. He just wants to make clever arguments to score partisan points. The fact is, Mr. Speaker, the British Columbia price on pollution has been there since 2008 and will continue to be administered by British Columbia, not the federal government.
Well done.
The honourable member for
that was classic.
Mr. Speaker.
So just to butt in here for a second. Did you catch that? Trudeau once again stammering around, stuttering, can't put a sentence together. And what's this about? Clever? He admits. Poilievre has put together clever arguments. He doesn't refute the facts. It's outrageous.
Start his sentence, his question. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the government in Canada are loving the fiscal imbalance. The federal government receives more in tax than what its jurisdictions are asking for, and provinces and Quebec are receiving less than their
yes,
just
you're right,
part.
Autumn Christian. He's pushing this rebate like he did with the heat pumps, and it's the same result. The heat pumps
Quebec's
were a bust.
Deficit is
Another
fabricated
phony
by the federal government
solution.
of Canada.
Phony solution.
Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, in this federation, that is Canada, the federal government is here to work with
Eddie
provincial
Monk, Trudeau and
governments
Biden
to
are on the same
deliver
drugs.
what
You bet they
Canadians
are.
need from coast to coast to coast. We have made record investments in healthcare, in dental care, in transfers to provinces to deliver the services that
Very
they need.
good
I
remark, Brad
understand
Peterson.
that the leader of the Bloc Québécois wants to make this a debate on Quebec's sovereignty, but the reality of the matter is that
Justin
we
and
are
Sophie
working very
dumpster
well together,
diving
and
for
we
the
will
next
continue
meal.
to make sure that
Chances
all
are
Canadians from coast to
she
coast
will
to
find
coast
her new
prosper.
book in there. Yeah,
The honourable member.
I haven't bought it. I won't be.
We won't make it a debate, but he owes $6 billion to Quebec when it comes to healthcare. $1 billion for welcoming refugees. That's $7 billion total on an $11 billion
There's never enough money
deficit.
for Quebec as the bloc is concerned. So.
Everyone is against him, and he is throttling and strangling Quebec.
Whining bloc,
is he
yes.
using that money to try and force Quebec to follow the federal government?
How can we put up with 18 more months? I don't know.
Honourable Prime
I
Minister.
don't know if the country can survive
Mr. Speaker,
12 more months of Justin Trudeau.
Understand
We're at a
that
crisis.
when
We're at a
I
breaking point.
talk
We're
to
in a
Quebec,
crisis at a breaking
when I
point.
work with
With
Quebecers,
so
I'm
many
working
issues
with
and
them.
policies. Not just the
I'm not working
economic
with the Bloc
catastrophe that's
Québécois.
coming.
I'm
We're on the
working
precipice of
with
a Great
the Prime Minister
Depression.
of Quebec, the Premier of Quebec, rather. We
But
had
it's
an excellent discussion on
it's the
healthcare,
policies
on immigration,
Trudeau
on
is pushing
economic
on
growth.
censorship,
We won't always agree on everything,
euthanasia,
of course, but we
and other
do agree on
completely
the need to work together in a
devastating
constructive way
policies
without
for
looking
Canadians
petty
that are
squabbles, which is what
the
Bloc Québécois
things
seeks
that
to
are
do every
going
single day.
to make or break this country.
From Burnaby South.
After decades of liberal and conservative failure, Indigenous communities continue to live in overcrowded homes that are in desperate need of repair. The Liberals promised to make a major step forward to improving this by 2030, but today's Auditor General report makes it clear that the Liberals will break yet another promise to Indigenous people. So will the Liberal government stop spending millions of dollars on private consultants and make this serious issue a priority in the upcoming budget?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we thank the Auditor General for her report and are, of course, carefully reviewing all of her recommendations to pursue a path forward that effectively addresses those concerns. In regards to Indigenous cooperation and partnerships, whether it's on housing or policing, consultation is at the heart of everything we do. We're committed to working in partnership with First Nations to advance these priorities.
Thanks for your donation.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. My apologies. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South. Indigenous communities
he's
are
not
living
the official
in overcrowded
opposition.
housing units.
He's not
that
even
are in
opposition.
desperate need
He's in
of
Trudeau's
repair.
hip pocket.
The Auditor General's report released today shows that 80% of housing needs are not being met. The Prime Minister would never allow this kind of thing to happen in Toronto. So why
Thank you, Keith.
does he have lower standards for Indigenous communities?
Okay, such a clown.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Clown talking to clown.
Mr. Speaker, that's rightly false. What has just been proffered by the leader of the NDP. We have invested historic amounts to work with Indigenous communities on housing, on services and healthcare, on assistance to help economic prosperity. There's still a lot of work to do, we recognize it, but the progress that we have done on reconciliation and our partnerships with Indigenous peoples will continue, and we would like to thank the Auditor General for her recommendations. We'll continue to work hand in hand with Indigenous communities to deliver.
Sandy Klein, if that Online Harms Act goes through, we will be full communist. You're right.
Tax hike of 23% will hit Nova Scotians especially hard. The Prime Minister's tax will cost $1,500 for the average Nova Scotia family, far more than they get back in rebates. That's why Nova Scotia's Assembly passed a unanimous motion with all three parties supporting it, calling for federal MPs from that province to vote with Conservatives to spike the hike. One of those MPs is from King's Hants, the chair of the Agriculture Committee, which has been studying the carbon tax pain for farmers. So the question is for the chair of the Agriculture Committee, will he vote with us to spike the hike?
We need to spike the hike. There's no question about it. But Trudeau is adamant about this. He is so damn stubborn about his so-called tax on pollution, which is a scam. And it's a sham to say carbon is the pollution.
Order.
The pollution is in Trudeau's head.
Order. So, colleagues, of course, questions can be asked of the government regarding administrative issues of the government, and of course to committee chairs. It's important for Canadians to understand, though, that when questions are asked of committee chairs, it has to be regarding stuff that has committee business, and that's before the committee right now. And so in consultation, we realize that isn't the issue that is here before. So I see that the Honourable Minister for Housing is rising on his feet.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And look, what the honourable member is actually suggesting is false. We have real-world data to demonstrate in provinces where the system actually applies, families receive hundreds of dollars more each year than they pay in fuel charges. The Conservatives pretend to care about affordability, yet they oppose measures to put more money in the pockets of families. They pretend to care about affordability, but they oppose measures that protect seniors' pensions. They pretend to care about affordability, but they vote against measures to remove the interest on Canada's student loans. Mr. Speaker, we will do everything we can to make life more affordable, including putting more money in the pockets of families while we fight climate change at the same time.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, that parliamentary censorship proves everything you need to know about this and everything else in this government. I asked a question of the member for King's Hants, the chair of the Agriculture Committee, who's now studying the painful impacts of the carbon tax, and the front bench here shut him down, told him to sit down and shut up because they had a better mouthpiece for the PMO who would stand and speak in his stead. Mr. Speaker, the question is for the member for King's Hants, the chair of the Agriculture Committee. His committee studying how the carbon tax hurts farmers. Will he vote to spike the hike?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Speaker, if the honourable member has qualms about the member for King's Hants, I can reassure him he is a champion for his community. He launched a petition recently to stand up to the Conservative government in Nova Scotia for changes to the agricultural sector in his community. Every time the Conservatives ask a question about the environment, it's to find out ways that they can do less. The member for Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke has suggested flooding in the Ottawa River was a result of regulations that were not in place. The member from Caribou, Prince George, has suggested climate change is not a result of industrial pollution, but of more body heat from a growing population. The member from Red Deer Lacombe visited school kids to say carbon dioxide was plant food. Mr. Speaker, this...
It is. You bloody idiot. Nothing but air between your ears. I am so sick of this lie being spread.
He's absolutely right. It is a joke. An April Fool's joke, and the joke is on Canadian taxpayers, especially Nova Scotians, who will have to pay $1,500 in higher carbon taxes after that hike goes ahead. He says that the member for King's Hants is a champion who can't even speak, who's silent silence by his own MPs. Will the member?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition has 10 seconds left on the clock.
Will the censored champion break his silence and tell us, will he vote for his constituents to spike the hike, or will he rip them off on April Fool's?
The censored champion. That's good. That's really good.
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Speaker, the Conservatives want to peddle false information to trick Canadians into voting for them. The reality, proven not by projections, but by real-world data, is that people who live in my province receive more money every year from the rebates that they receive than the fuel charge that they pay.
It's live.
Conservatives do.
Oh. And this idiot looks like he's trying to take off in flight. Well, he spews this nonsense about us getting more back in your rebate.
Mr. Speaker, at every instance that Conservatives have an opportunity to speak in House, they do one of two things. Advocate to do less on the environment or to take money from families in my community. I will support neither. We will do whatever we can to put more money in the pockets of families and do the right thing for future generations.
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the question was for the silent member from King's Hants. He is asked to explain how he's voting for a carbon tax of $1,500 per family that only pays back $963 in rebates. I asked him specifically to stand and answer, but he's been shut down and shut up by his masters in the PMO. So once again, will the chair of the Agriculture Committee and member for King's Hants stand in today and tell us whether he will vote to spike the hike or raise the tax?
They just look like a bunch of cowards, these Liberals. Much better level of questions today.
I will invite all members to please listen to their House Leader and the House Leader teams. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the Leader of the Opposition knows full well the rules of this place and knows full well that members on this side are proud and pleased to defend the initiatives and the affordability measures.
I'm going to ask the Honourable Member from Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan, to wait his turn to ask a question before taking the floor. The Honourable Government House Leader has 23 seconds left on the clock.
The Leader knows the rules of this place and knows that on this side of the House, we're pleased and proud to speak to the affordability measures and the things that we're putting in place to make life more affordable for Canadians. But while we're on this theme, I have a question for the member of the Defence Committee from Selkirk Interlake. Why did he sell out the people of Ukraine in voting against?
Well, we had to get Ukraine in there, didn't we? Look at little Chrystia Freeland standing up about that. More billions for Ukraine. What a bunch of cowards.
I'll ask the Honourable Government House Leader to please have order in this House. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the people of King's Hants, Nova Scotia, are learning they don't have a voice in Parliament because he has been silenced. The Prime Minister is terrified that he might stand up and get off script. He knows that the unanimous will of the Nova Scotia legislature, Liberals, Conservatives, and New Democrats, was passed in a motion calling for all of that province's MPs to vote against the hike. So will the member for King's Hants, who's the chair of the Agriculture Committee, stand up for farmers in his riding and vote with us to spike the hike? Yes or no?
We have a good debate going on here about spike the hike versus axe the tax.
Mr. Speaker,
oh no. Yeah. Trudy's gone for the day.
Stands up for his
Little
constituents,
is up.
stands up for the people of Nova Scotia, and stands up for the people of Canada every single day. On this side of the House, we are
The hell with this money for Ukraine.
our colleague.
Why don't you pay for this, Christia?
Is the people of King's Hands do not need cuts, and that is all the Conservatives have to offer them or any single Canadian.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The member for King's Hands is in the witness protection program today. He can't possibly stand up when his whip waves for him to sit down, which is exactly what happened a moment ago when I asked him a legitimate question as chair of the Agriculture Committee, a committee that's studying the devastating impact of the carbon tax on farmers in his riding and across the country. So for a sixth time, will he come out of the witness protection program and announce whether he will vote for our motion to spike the hike?
He's got him there. That's good. Witness protection program.
Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives love to talk Canada down. They
talk Canada down
and falsehood. But on this side of the House, we believe in Canada and we believe in Canadians. And that's why I am so glad to share some good news with the members of this House. And that is the inflation number for February, which came out this morning, 2.8% below expectations.
Yeah, does anyone believe we're at 2.8% inflation? What nonsense! The plan is working to create a huge depression. That's we're on the precipice of that.
In 12 days, Ottawa will cut $1 billion from healthcare if Quebec does not accept conditions that are its own jurisdiction. 12 days, when we are talking about sums that Quebec and Ottawa have been agreeing on for over a year. If the federal government's priority were patience, this money would have been transferred a long time ago. But no, in 12 days, it's either the acts or accepted conditions. The federal government is holding sick people hostage with the money they pay in taxes. Why not simply give priority to patients by transferring the money right now without conditions? The Honourable Minister for Health. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a bit odd. It's always the Bloc Québécois who are looking for squabbles. But when I talk to Minister Dubé and the Quebec government, they want to work with a spirit of cooperation with our government to improve the health of all Quebecers. And that is the reason for which there will be an agreement with the province of Quebec before the end of the month, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Jonquière. We could talk about tense intergovernment relations if only there were relations. Instead, the federal government has entered the phase of just saying no to unconditional increases in health transfers, no to the right to opt out of dental and medical insurance, no to support the reception of asylum seekers. Finally, the only thing the federal government won't say no to is our tax dollars. But Quebecers are entitled to have their say on what the federal...
Yeah, talking about MP salaries, they just recently voted to increase their salaries. So that's the one thing they always vote together on. It's unanimous. Yes, blockheads. Sandy, I've been calling them blockheads since I worked on the Hill. It's the one party I could never liaise with in any constructive way because they should not be sitting in the House of Commons. Sorry.
Exactly the opposite of the spirit.
Sorry about the sound there. I don't know what happened.
The Honourable Minister for Health. Mr. Speaker, it's only the Bloc Québécois that says
sound
no
is
all
back.
the time.
Sorry,
The
I
Quebec
don't know how I accidentally hit
seeking
the
out
sound.
squabbles, but for us, we seek out solutions together
My
with
apologies.
Quebec to make sure that
We don't want to miss
information is
Mark
present
Holland's
in every
pristine
province and every
words.
territory. And I'm eminently proud that we have an agreement with every province and territory so that we can increase the quality of healthcare throughout Canada. That is our objective. We will work in a spirit of cooperation and collaboration. We're not just going to play partisan politics like they want us to.
The honourable member from Lethbridge.
Last year in my riding, Polk Farms, a local producer, was forced to pay $62,000 just in carbon tax on his natural gas alone. That's $62,000. And what this Liberal NDP government doesn't understand, because it is so out of touch, is that when Canadians go to the grocery store, they pick up that bill when they go to buy groceries for their families. Canadians are already struggling, and now on April 1st, they're going to face another increase of 23%. Will the Prime Minister spike the hike and axe the tax?
Yeah, when hell freezes over.
And, you know, I'd like to say to the member opposite, I want a reminder of the rural top-up coming to the carbon rebate. So a family of four in Alberta is going to see $2,160. A family in my riding is going to see $1,430 when they live in a rural area. My friends, we know what it's like. That's why we're there to help people with the carbon rebate. That's why we're there to help with the childcare benefit. That's why we're there to help with housing. We're there to help Canadians, Mr. Speaker, in rural areas as well.
Before I get to the honourable member from Lethbridge, I'm going to ask all members, please, to only take the floor when they are recognized by the Speaker to do so. The honourable member from Lethbridge.
I think what's clear is that the Liberals have a dysfunctional relationship with the truth. Yeah. You see, Canadians pay more than they actually get back. And so for the average Albertan family, they pay $2,943. Meanwhile, they get back $2,032, which means ultimately they are $1,000 in the hole.
Yeah, Thomas is a great MP.
To remit to this
Right on.
government. That is how much this government is pickpocketing from them. Why is this government doing that to Canadians when they are already struggling to pay their bills, make ends meet, provide for their family?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure what's happening on the Conservative side of this House. Maybe it's that
Oh,
they've
Randy,
the
you calling any of your trans youth lately?
when it comes to defending
This
the
guy's a
interests
disgrace.
of Albertans and their pensions. Where's the MP for Edmonton Mill Woods? Where's the...
This man is a disgrace. Claiming he's up all night worried about the kids who can't get their sex change at 12. I just want to puke every time I see him. He's up all night taking calls from trans youth. And if you believe that, and if he is taking calls from kids in school,
The honourable member from South Shore St. Margaret's, I'm going to ask.
I think we have a problem.
And ask all members, please, to allow members to speak for two reasons. One, so that the speaker can hear the question or hear the response. And secondly, is because there are members who do not speak the other official language. And if they're trying to listen in their earphones, they can't hear. So please, I'll ask all members to restrain themselves. The Honourable Minister has 20 seconds left on the clock.
Mr. Speaker, where are the Conservative MPs in this House when it comes to defending Albertans and making sure they have a dignified retirement? They are silent on CPP. They are silent on defending Albertans. They have been muzzled by their leader, and they are not standing up for Albertans, despite Danielle Smith's disastrous attempt to pull the Canadians out of the CPP. The Conservatives of nowhere. We're here for...
Colleagues,
Randy, put a bag over your bald head.
Question period should be 45 minutes long. If we take up time from here, that means that questions get dropped. So let's not do that. Let's try to keep ourselves to time by respecting those who have the floor. I'm certain everybody would like to hear the question from the member from Tobic-Matqua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll tell you where Albertan MPs are. They're standing up for their constituents and voting non-confidence in this government that needs Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Liberal NDP government, upwards of 50 active military families are using the food bank, and I just visited one in Oromocto, New Brunswick. 50 families who are serving at Base Gagetown, Canada's largest military base. This is an absolute disgrace and completely unacceptable. Now they're adding insult to injury by hiking their punitive, ineffective, and useless carbon tax. When will they finally listen to Canadians and show some respect to our nation's finest? And
well, that was an impassioned plea. Yes, Trudeau ran away again.
The Honourable Minister for Rural Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, I really find it quite rich coming from the member opposite, from Tobic-Matqua, when they voted against a raise to our hardworking DND employees. You know, I also would like to ask the member, they voted against the increase for ACOA last fall when they stood and we had the all-night morning marathon. I'd love to ask him what he was going to say to the 106 projects that were funded in his riding that he voted against. Trust me, we'll be telling them that we have the backs for small businesses in rural New Brunswick and rural Atlantic Canada.
The Honourable Member from Tobic-Matqua.
Mr. Speaker, I'll be glad to tell them I was voting non-confidence in this government that needs to be replaced. This government has caused the inflationary crisis through reckless spending, and now they're hiking a carbon tax by 23% on gas, heat, and food on April 1st. If they really cared about Canadians, especially those who sacrifice so much in service to our country, they would listen to the well over 70% of Canadians who are demanding them to get off their backs and axe the tax.
Yeah.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, there is so much shouting today that I can forgive the member opposite.
It's hard to take her seriously.
Earlier today, the good news for Canadians, which is thanks to the hard work of Canadians, and it has been a challenging time. Inflation in February is back to the Bank of Canada's target range. And that followed the numbers for January. Inflation back to the Bank of Canada's target range. This is good news for Canadians who have been through a hard time. We support Canada and Canadians. All they want to do is cut, cut, cut.
No, all you want to do is just
the Honourable Member
pretend you know more than anybody on the face of this earth.
Are experiencing a double housing crisis. Rent is increasing at the fastest pace in the country, all while we're seeing the lowest vacancy rates we've had in a decade. The Conservative slogans won't build affordable homes, and the Liberals aren't fixing the problem they've created. The NDP's Protecting Renters Fund would help save affordable homes and give renters the hope they need. Will the Liberals commit to including this fund in the budget so Edmontonians don't go houseless?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructures and Community.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Honourable Member for his question and for his advocacy. I had the opportunity to be in Edmonton recently to meet with the Mayor and the Provincial Minister in Alberta, as well as my colleague, the Member for Edmonton Centre. We are working hard to advance additional funding to support community-based organizations that support Canadians who are living without a roof over their head. We also very recently had the opportunity to share an agreement with $175 million behind it that will build thousands of homes in Edmonton, including more rentals, which will help reduce the cost of rent and continue to support people who are looking to find a place to live. There is no silver bullet to the housing crisis, but we will pull every lever at his disposal to help solve it by working together with Edmonton.
The Honourable Member from Timmins, James Bay.
The European Union states that Netanyahu is using deliberate starvation of children in Gaza as a weapon of war. Human rights groups have spoken out against targeting of journalists, civilians, hospitals, aid workers, and the UN has called out for Canada for complicity in this because we provide the military weapons to Israel. Last night, Parliament called for an end to military aid to Netanyahu's government, and yet numerous military supply deals are still in the works. So will the minister respect Parliament and tell us whether or not deals like the guns from Colt and Kitchener and armed vehicles from Rochelle and Brampton will be sent to Israel? Yes or no?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to begin by saying that yesterday for me was the day I was very proud to be a parliamentarian. In this House, we came together, 4 to 5 parties, to find a workable solution, to find a Canadian position that Canadians could be comfortable with. We will continue to advocate for a ceasefire. We will continue to not sell arms as we have promised, and continue to make sure that we bring hostages back to where they belong in their homes. We will continue to do that. I invite the Conservatives to be as engaged in this as we are.
They haven't got a clue whose side they're on.
From Northwest Territories.
These people are such morons.
Mr. Speaker, we all recognize the crucial importance of accessible, high-quality child care for families in the
Time
Northwest
for the
Territories. With the
softball
increase of
question.
cost of living, accessible daycare is vital. Families in my riding and across the North have been eager to see this plan built out. To the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, what's being done for the Northwest Territories and for Northerners more broadly?
I'd like to thank the member for that excellent question.
Honourable Minister for Families.
They cut it out.
I met with Jude from the Yellowknife Daycare Center, Jennifer at Aurora College, and many others who were able to share with me
Jenna
firsthand
Sutz.
the impact
I'll
of
have
our
a scotch and
Canada-wide
soda.
system on making life more affordable. As of April 1st, families in Northwest
Every time she
Territories
pops
will
up on
see
the
their
screen,
child care fees reduced to an average of $10 a
I think
day,
there's a barmaid
saving
coming
them
to my
up
table.
$9,000 each year
With
per
a name like
child. This
Jenna
is meaningful
Sutz.
savings, Mr. Speaker, each and every month for the mums and dads in Northwest Territories to put towards the essentials that their families need.
The honourable
These
member
people are
for
just
Mégontier
shameless.
Glérable.
Totally shameless.
They're starving. That's how they are. That's the explanation of the food bank owner in Montreal. People are waiting in lines up. There was pushing because there wasn't enough food. After 8 years of this prime minister, food banks are crowded, overcrowded because food costs too much. What is the prime minister doing? Raising the
Can't afford any
carbon tax on
cents.
April 1st with the
Okay,
support of the
Sandy, yeah.
bloc. It costs a lot to block, Mr. Speaker. When will they cancel the 23% increase in the tax slated for April 1st? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
That's wonderful.
The survival of our planet is at stake. I cannot ignore this climate.
That's a good comment here. Why are we in foreign wars? What happened to peacekeeping?
Emergency and continue to.
We're in foreign wars because this idiot wants us to spend billions on Ukraine because she's more interested in Ukraine, in that dictatorship in Ukraine, than she is about the dictatorship in Canada that she's part of.
The Conservatives want to demolish it. We will not allow this.
Where did Mr. Unpopular go? I don't know. I don't see
Mr. Speaker,
the Minister of Foreign Affairs
Quebec
there
families and a growing number of workers is at stake right now because food costs too much.
I don't see Melanie Joly in the House today.
Quebec imports
and
food
Justin
from the
is
rest
taken
of Canada.
off.
Farmers that
Very
grow
interesting.
food pay the carbon tax. The food processors pay the carbon tax. Truckers who transport this food pay the carbon tax. And guess what? Who pays the end bill? Quebec.
Uh-oh. We're having the problem again.
Families, Mr. Speaker. Carbon tax that the Liberal bloc wants to increase costs Quebecers a lot too. When will they end this craziness? The Honourable Minister of Innovation, Mr. Speaker, while the Conservatives are
haven't
playing
seen
with
him in
words,
weeks.
we have learned that the UN has just said that 2024 will be the hottest year in history. And what we hear from the Conservatives, Mr. Speaker, is to do nothing. The planet
is sounding the alarm. And that is why on this side of the House, we're going to continue to invest to fight climate change. We're going to continue to invest in Canadian families. And Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue to invest in this despite the fact that the Conservatives want to ignore climate change in this country. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse-Desjardins-Malavis. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 8 years of this Liberal government, more and more Canadians are using food banks. People are so hungry that tension is mounting in food bank lines. So much so that the police have to intervene to restore order.
My apologies, folks. I thought we had this solved today.
During food distribution.
Well, I might have to change this here. Yeah, it's just totally frozen on CPAC. All right, that's the last day of CPAC. Damn. And it's CPAC too, because I'm coming in fine here. I don't know. I guess it's Poilievre tomorrow. I said I was going to do that yesterday. Well, we were near the end, but it's totally frozen. And it's not my site, it's CPAC's site. By the time I get over to Poilievre, we're going to be at the end of the session here. Okay. Well, I'm just going to see if I can get Poilievre. No. Yeah, I'm going to go over to Poilievre, even if we have to So let us do.
Simply spike the hike, axe the tax, and give small businesses their money back.
There. How's that for quick action?
The
So we're
Honourable
back.
Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker,
I don't understand what's going on with CPAC, but anyway,
is a member of Parliament.
at least you get to see the end of it.
British Columbia.
My apologies for that.
Rightly proud of its place as a leader in Canada and the world.
We'll have this. I think we'll go to Parleview from now on. The CPAC thing is ridiculous.
People of BC support. So either the Conservative Party is ignorant of this or disrespects the people of BC. When it comes to small businesses, that money will be going back to small businesses very soon.
The Honourable Member from Mission Mashpee Fraser Canyon.
Mr. Speaker, it's not just small businesses that have been betrayed by this government on the carbon tax. First Nations and Métis communities are owed over $1 billion in promised rebates. In what seems like a sick April Fool's joke, remote and rural communities will see the cost of the carbon tax increase by 23% on April 1st. This means higher costs to operate schools, band offices, and businesses. So I'll ask again, when will this government spike the hike, axe the tax, and give remote and rural Indigenous communities and Métis communities their money back?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I have a lot of respect for that MP from British Columbia, but I am really disappointed that he seems entirely ignorant of how the price on pollution works in BC. There is no federal backstop in BC. There is no federal backstop on BC small businesses, on the people of BC. BC has an exceptional system pricing pollution, which the province has had in place since 2008. The people of BC are proud of it, and they should be.
Honourable Member from North Okanagan, Shuswap.
Mr. Speaker, $100,000 is not chicken feed because Richard, a farmer in the Shuswap, paid that out in carbon tax to run his farm instead of buying feed to raise chickens and put food on Canadians' tables. Now, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister wants to raise the carbon tax by 23% as part of his plan to quadruple it. After 8 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Will he spike the hike, axe the tax, let farmers grow the food so that Canadians can afford to put food on the table?
The Honourable Minister for Rural Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to be part of a government that understands climate change is real and understands the impact that it's having on farmers from coast to coast to coast. I've seen firsthand.
I'm not letting the Ag Minister stand up anymore.
The impact of drought, all that has a cost on our farmers. I'm proud to be part of a government that is fighting climate change so my little granddaughter can say, Nanny, you tried to make a difference.
Yeah.
Because climate change is real and it is impacting everyone.
What a blowhard, grandstanding idiot.
The Honourable Hands. Order. I'll invite the Honourable. Invite all members, please. There seems to be great enthusiasm to hear from the Honourable Member. The Honourable Member from King's Hands from the top.
Speaker, I'm glad the Tories stood up. They might not like the question, though, because the member from Carleton talks about farmers in King's Hands, but he actually stands in their way. He will not allow Bill 234 to come to this House to actually be voted on. And so I called on the member of Carleton to actually do that to support farmers. But my question, Mr. Speaker, is to the Minister from Nova Scotia. Can he tell this House, and indeed Nova Scotians, the work that we've done to adjust the federal backstop to support rural Canadians, and including the programs we put in place on affordability around home heating and heat pumps, contrary to those guys across the way?
Yeah, I had to plug it in here. Well, I'm definitely going to go with Carl View from now on because it's CPAC. I just have to get get it framed properly for tomorrow.
And communities.
Mr. Speaker, over the past
We'll
year and
do
a half
that.
in our home province of Nova Scotia, we have felt the impacts of climate change more than any other part of the country, with wildfires, Hurricane Fiona, floods in the honourable member's riding. He has been a staunch advocate for rural communities and for the agricultural sector every step of the way. Because of his advocacy, we have doubled the rural rebate that households in Nova Scotia receive. Because of his advocacy, we are helping cover the cost of heat pumps that is saving between $1,500 and $4,700 a year. And because of his advocacy, the provincial government is retreating on a policy that would impact the wine growers in his region. I am proud to stand alongside him today and will be for years.
The honourable member from Edmonton Mill Woods.
8 years of this NDP Liberal government's soft on crime policies, more and more Canadians are becoming victims to violent crime right across the country. The Toronto
Just
Star
leave your
reports
keys
that
at the
car
door.
thefts have more than doubled so far in 2024, and breaking interest for the purpose of car thefts have already exceeded the total number of all of last year. Canadians not only concerned about their private property, but also the safety of their families. And I met some of these families in Brampton this week. And
That's a good one.
When will this Prime Minister,
Linda Allen Harris, yes. Christy Freeland's
Canadians from
the largesse is showing around her waist.
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, our government is always focused on protecting Canadians from crime.
Absolutely.
That's why we're working with police forces, municipal authorities, and provincial governments.
You're working so hard, Dominic.
Exactly everything we need to do to crack down on this,
Especially bending that elbow.
violent criminal activity. I've had conversations with the Premier of Ontario, with police chiefs across the country. The RCMP are working in collaboration with their partners in these jurisdictions. The Canadian Border Services Agency sees 68 vehicles at the Port of Montreal this week alone. And Mr. Speaker, we'll continue to do everything we need to do to keep Canadians safe.
Exactly.
The honourable member from Edmonton Mill Woods.
Mr. Speaker, what they did do is bring in Bill C5 and 75 that allows these same criminals to quickly get bail and be out on the street, sometimes on the same day. As a result, small businesses across the country are not only dealing with the higher taxes, like the carbon tax that the Liberals have brought forward, but now are having to pay for extra security to protect their businesses and their families from property theft, organized crime, extortion, shootings, arson. This is a new reality for businesses and families in Canada after 8 years of this Prime Minister. He's not the worst. He's not worth the cost, corruption, or crime, Mr. Speaker. When will it end?
The Honourable Minister for Justice and the
I respect that member opposite, but what I respect most of all is that he actually wasn't here when we were voting on Bill C-75. That piece of legislation actually enhanced the penalties on somebody convicted for auto theft, something that most of his colleagues voted against. He wasn't here, so I'll excuse him on that one.
Well,
When they showed mandatory minimum
there's the online harms guy.
Ben Perrin, he might remember that individual. He used to be the league advisor to a guy named Stephen Harper. Ben Perrin has been on the record as saying that mandatory minimum penalties were a gross error, a miscarriage of justice, and perpetuate systemic racism. That's why we reversed them. I wish these guys would get on board.
Get on board with your censorship train.
Honourable member for Charlebourg, Haut-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, car thefts have almost doubled in Toronto on last year, and 2024 has just begun. And where have the stolen vehicles gone? The Port of Montreal. I applaud the efforts of the Sûreté du Quebec in February, but the federal government must do more. That's why our leader has proposed amending the criminal code to bring back tougher penalties for car thieves and provide the necessary resources to the ports to help them stop the crime. Does the Liberal government realize their strategy isn't working on car theft? The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada. Mr. Speaker, in terms of crime in my community and car thefts, well, we are prioritizing this. The investments we did at the Port of Montreal, it affects 28 million, 121 million for police assistance, and another 15 million to help
This is the guy who wants to put you under house arrest for thought crime.
Investments.
This is the guy who wants to fine you $100,000 for something deemed hateful and put you in jail for life.
In our communities. Thank you.
This man is a criminal,
the
not
honourable member
an attorney general.
Cole Harbour.
Speaker, I believe that no one in this country should ever spend their days in pain because they cannot afford to see a dentist. Oral health is health. I hear from seniors in Dartmouth Cole Harbour that the new Canadian dental care plan is going to make a real difference in their quality of life. Yet the Conservatives just don't care. They voted against dental care for Canadians, and we know that Conservatives always choose cuts over care. Can the Minister of Seniors of Citizen Services please let Canadians know how many people have applied for the program and how many seniors will lose their dental coverage if the Conservatives get their way?
The Honourable Minister for Citizen Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
He's not sure who he is either.
Thanks to his efforts, more than 1.5 million Canadians have successfully enrolled in our dental care program. Bravo. Today, those 70 and older can apply, and children and people with disabilities can apply starting in June. In total, we expect 9 million Canadians to benefit. I do not understand why Conservatives want to take dental care away from more than 1 in 5 Canadians. But if we all work together, Canadians can make sure that they never have that opportunity.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Before I pass the floor to the Honourable Member from Victoria, I'm going to ask the Honourable Member from Perth Wellington, please, who is an experienced member, to not shout out his comments and allow members to who have the floor to respond. Sorry, my apologies. My apologies. Both are very respected members. The Honourable Member from Wellington Halton Hills, I should have said. The Honourable Member from Victoria now has the floor.
It's like an elephant sitting on my chest. That's how a child in Edmonton describes the air quality right now. Canada currently has the worst air quality in North America. Our kids are breathing in harmful toxins, and it's only going to get worse with this year's wildfire season. But the Liberals are acting like it's business as usual, breaking climate promises while handing out billions to Canada's biggest polluters. And the Conservatives can't even agree whether climate change is real. Will the Liberals stop putting the interests of oil and gas CEOs over the health and safety of our children?
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for her question. In fact, we are doing exactly that. We're the first country, the only country in the G20 to have phased out fossil fuel subsidies, 2 years ahead of everyone else. We're the only country that has committed to eliminate public financing for fossil fuel subsidies. We have the best
there are no
performance
fossil
of
fuel
all G7 countries in
subsidies,
terms of
you
greenhouse gas reduction
half-baked
between
idiot.
2019 and 2021.
He's
We
making
are
this up. There
working
are
to
no
fight climate
subsidies
change.
for
We are
fossil fuel.
working to improve air quality all across the country.
Go
Mr.
back to
Speaker.
Greenpeace. Go, try climbing buildings again.
The Honourable Member from Skeena Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, this past weekend, Flair cancelled one of its flights back to Canada and left over 100 passengers stranded in another country. No communication with them, no food provided, no rebooking on other airlines. They had to find their own way back to this country. Now, if this sounds like deja vu, it's because the exact same thing happened 2 years ago, and the Liberals promised to stand up to the big airline CEOs. So to the minister, will he tell these passengers why his supposedly new and improved air passenger rights let them down so badly?
The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, we will always stand up for Canadians and always stand up for passengers' rights, Mr. Speaker. There was nothing before we came in. Now we're in touch with Flair, we're in touch with our other airline companies, Mr. Speaker, to see what we can do, but we'll always side with our air passengers.
And so brings to an end of question period. Orders of the day.
Thanks for watching today, folks. That was a better question period than we had previously. But we're still not getting on some of the real issues, and that's unfortunate. But it's because they're really not thinking about anything right now except Easter. afraid. I'm afraid that's it. Yes. Thank you for all your comments today. Yeah, we had some wonderful comments. I really did. And appreciate everything you're saying. Stay engaged. I know it's difficult to watch this crap sometimes, but it's the only way we can really raise issues in the national media, and we need to do that. So appreciate all of your input, as I always do, and we're going to be back again tomorrow. I do believe the funeral is today for Brian Mulroney, and both Poilievre and Trudeau took off early. But you never with Trudeau, he's always taking off early for everything. So we'll be back again tomorrow. I'm trying to put a broadcast together as well. We'll see what happens. Thank you for your continued support. We had some glitches today. CPAC is just falling apart for its live broadcasts. I'm not going to be using them anymore. And I'm just getting some of my own issues resolved here with technical things, because I've never run this broadcast this long for question period with a 10-minute preamble and trying to keep you informed with the news of the day at the same time. It'll come together. And when question period's off, we're going to try something else in the same time block that I think will be interesting to you all. Thank you all. God bless you. We love you. And we'll see you